Okay, everybody, here we are. This is episode 2 of Here Comes the Spider Cast. This is your co-host, as always, Michael, and I'm joined by...
Josh Murr.
All right. And we are covering every single Spidey comic to come out in the 1980s, starting with June 1980. This month, in our second episode, we are now at... we started in June with one comic, then we went to July with the 3 comics that came out that month, and now we're in August 1980. So today we're starting off with Amazing Spider-Man 207, which has a Spidey versus Mesmero. Actually, we should probably talk about this. Mm-hmm. How do you, is it Mesmero? How do you pronounce it?
I thought it was Mesmero.
Okay.
But
I don't know. Mesmero is more Italian sounding. Maybe, who knows, right? Wait a minute. Hold the phone. Oh, I was gonna say, isn't this the same character in the Tempest? But that's Prospero.
Oh, okay.
Prospero, and this is Mesmero or Mesmero. Well, anyway. I hope no one attacks me for not being woke, but I don't know how to pronounce this name. So if anyone's listening, feel free to write it and let us know, right?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so in this story, it's kind of an interesting premise. This is Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, actually. Well, no, it is Spider-Man. Spider-Man basically finds himself a job with Mesmero. And it's interesting because he actually goes out of his way to break a date with his girlfriend at this time in order to get this job, which I think is really cool, really Stan Lee-esque plot there. And so I think of all the... I was surprised because this is written by Denny O'Neil, and I've heard a lot of bad things about his Spider-Man run, but I think of all the Spidey comics we've read, this one might be the most classic feeling.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I completely agree. I feel like I'm going to say this every single episode, but for me, Spider-Man is like both the supervillain problems and his personal problems. And he's, always got something going on, whether it's girl troubles or can't make enough money or, gets fired from his job. There's always something in his personal life that also goes wrong. And this was just like the perfect blend of like everything kind of popping up all at once, and classic down on his luck Spider-Man. You're right.
And it also is helped by, in my opinion, excellent art by Jim Mooney, who I like. His career is most known for, I think, his run on Supergirl. At this point, he was working for Marvel. He had done a run on Ghost Rider, I believe, and I think we've come across it before. I don't even remember if it was last week or if it was in Quasar Chronology.
I think it was in Quasar.
Right. Yeah. But he is a classic artist, and I mean, you might argue that his layouts are a little bit, I guess you could say, subdued compared to like, say, Jack Kirby or John Buscema. But geez, like it almost looks like John Romita Sr. Just such eloquent figures and shading and layouts. Clear storytelling. So yeah, this definitely feels like a classic Spider-Man story.
Yeah, this was definitely one of my favorites of this week that we've read. It was a lot of fun. I love like even like the little details that they add into it. The first page, it's kind of like a splash page, but it's like what they do is they make it look like an old movie poster.
Right.
It's just so fun.
Or even like a circus poster. I think.
Yeah. It's really fun. Even down to like not calling, the artists and the writers, they call them like other names in the
right.
In the top of the poster headline to kind of match that theme. It's really fun. Yeah,
it says Denny O'Neil, graphic technician, James Mooney. And there's 3 other people listed, probably the inkers. They're called Raconteurs, which is of course named after the 90s alternative band.
Ben Shawn is the purveyor of color.
Right.
It's just great. Yeah.
This is there's a lot of classic images, and this is something I think I didn't notice when I was younger, but now that I've been seeing it over and over, it's like just the image of Peter Parker changing into Spider-Man and like swinging from the ceiling and kind of hoping no one really notices him, and he's barefoot and he's got his shoes kind of tied around his arm. It just goes back to that idea that Peter Parker is kind of down on his luck. He doesn't have the spider cave, he doesn't have the wealth, he doesn't have, right? Like he's always kind of flying by the seat of his pants. And I think this
well, I think that's another thing too, is he's always kind of felt like he's like a top tier superhero, but he always has like street level problems, which is fun too, because he doesn't have the like advantage of having like a lair or, you know, a flying fortress or, you know, anything like that. It's just this kid, which is so fun. Yeah. But yeah, no, some of the like swinging panels and just like some of the things that Spidey does is a lot of fun. Even when he like down to him like standing on the roof talking to Mesmero.
Okay, what page is that on?
That's later on 7 on the digital, so it's probably might be 6 for you.
Okay, let's see here. Oh yes, pure Spider-Man, right? And really he doesn't do that often, but it's cool when he does, because we do have to remember he doesn't just crawl. Like he can stand, right? Because he can stick to walls. So yeah. And
then he makes like a Steve Martin joke right afterwards, after he's asked to jump off the ceiling. Like it's just so great. Yeah. Also, right on the same page, there's a classic shot of him. He buys a paper without the guy even realizing. He just leaves the money for the paper, and then he's reading it while sitting on a lamppost. Like I love things like that, because and again, it's kind of like, it's that old thing of, you know, the question whenever you're doing a story like this is, how would, like, if you're going to draw Spider-Man reading a newspaper, how would Spider-Man read it? If it's a Superman story, how would Superman read it? How would Batman? And every character should be completely different. You know, it's like we talked about the Thing. The Thing always acts like the Thing in these stories, right? Spider-Man always acts like Spider-Man. And it's just, it's an important thing that you shouldn't be, you should be able to, I mean, obviously we can see his costume, but even if you didn't know his costume, if you just saw the outline of him sitting there reading that paper, you'd know it was Spider-Man, right? There's a couple moments of unsubtlety I just want to quickly mention with the story. I mean, you could argue with this, but whatever. So he's crawling up the, I guess it's the Brooklyn Bridge on page digital 10, and he kind of, you know, flashes back to Gwen Stacy. Right. Which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's sort of like, it's kind of like how Batman has to remember his origin every issue. Spider-Man usually remembers his origin every issue. This is fine, but I guess the other thing to remember is this was only, 8 years after Gwen Stacy died. Right. So it's obviously fresher in his memory and in the reader's memory. So I don't know. It's a cool throwback, but maybe a little bit unsubtle. But I mean, that's to be expected at this time. Yeah. No, I can agree. It does feel a little bit ham-fisted, but I can kind of see both ways, where it can be like a fun nod, but it's also kind of like, again, retelling that over and over again. I will say, though, I really love how the panel itself gets shaky in that like bad memory. The line art is kind of like, everything else is very clean, and then you look at that panel and everything is like shifted and shaky, and you can tell that even like the panels kind of match his memory of that. I didn't even notice that. That's a great point. Wow. Yeah. There's also a funny line on the next page, on page 11, where a cop sees Spider-Man and he says, "You with the mask," like as if at this point he doesn't know who Spider-Man is, you know. Kind of ridiculous, but whatever. But overall, yeah, definitely, like we were saying, it's like a classic Spidey story. Like I mentioned earlier, I love the fact that he lies to break the date. The only thing I don't like, I think the ending is very abrupt. Okay. Because just the way it's resolved, it's basically resolved in like one page where, just a minute, now I went too far here. Let me just go back 1 second. But basically, he's in the middle of fighting Mesmero, and he kind of just says, "Your move, I was hoping you'd try a punch. Bad guy misses, good guy connects." I love traditional endings. Punches him. "Hey, Isle-Sitters, you've come too. Bravo, bravo, curtain," and then he just bows, and that's the end. Right. So, not a very satisfying ending. Kind of just a fist fight. But other than that, I mean, I can at least give it points for having a done-in-one story in one issue, which I always like. So yeah, what do you think of the ending? Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I was actually a little confused. I thought that for some reason I had skipped a page. Yeah, because I was like, oh, wait, how does this resolve? And then, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I had to reread the page, and then once I did, I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. I don't know, for some reason it just didn't click in my brain. Right. But I think that's just because of how abrupt it was.
Absolutely, yeah. So overall, like we said, it definitely has the vibe of a classic Spider-Man, and this is, I think, the first Denny O'Neil story we've read, and so far, despite its reputation, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, so now we can move on to Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, number... What is it?
It is...
45.
Number 45, yeah.
Right. Okay, so this one has one of those covers that I always remembered. Spider-Man is about to be, I guess, cremated, and he's inside a coffin, chained up.
Right.
He's about to be cremated by the Vulture. Now so this is Roger Stern. He's back again this month. He's our main man right now. Roger Stern is writing, and the art is by Marie Severin. Are you familiar with Marie Severin?
A little bit, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about her, but the only thing I know is that I believe in the 60s she was the only woman in the Marvel bullpen or on the Marvel bullpen, but she was definitely the only woman there. I mean, there was also like Flo Steinberg, but I think she was just in administration or something. But so she, throughout the whole 60s and 70s, I think, was the only female artist, and so anyway, that's her distinction. But she is a good artist.
Yeah.
This issue, I think, is unfortunately marred by the inks by Steve Mitchell, so it's kind of hard to tell, but the art is good, but it's also a little bit rough to look at. What do you think?
I agree. I think that the art is actually improved from the previous issue.
Okay.
I remember our last episode we talked about how this one, the art was a little bit rough. In this one, it's definitely much better. I can see how the inking is a little bit like kind of muddled and rough in times, but
yeah, and it just kind of makes it like, because there's a difference between aesthetic appeal and like actual like what's the word I'm looking for? Like the structure of the art can still be good even if it's ugly.
Right.
And so like some examples of I thought that were actually some good storytelling were on page, let's see, where is it here? Page 7, or sorry, digital page 8. There's actually a really good shot in the middle row of panels. There's a really great close-up of the Vulture's face. You see that?
Oh, yeah.
What a great shot. And it's funny because I was going to make a note of that, and then right below that, there's a nice sequence of the Vulture and his buddy walking away, his nephew.
Yeah.
Just as he's getting shot, and it's a really nice moment-to-moment sequence where you're kind of following him, turning around, reacting, and then just getting shot.
Right.
It was a great moment there.
And even like the panels kind of reflect that, like the background color of the panels, which is really fun. Yeah, because it starts off with them just like having the background of the city, then it's a pale blue behind them. When he turns around and notices what's going on, it's kind of yellow and shocking, and then right after the blam, it's all red.
Wow. It's funny because I didn't even notice that, and in film they say that that editing is the invisible art, but it's almost like, because that's the second time I think you've noticed something with the color that I haven't noticed, and it must just be because it's just not something. It's for me, it's just subliminal.
Right.
Like it's like I'm experiencing what they're trying, the effect that they're trying to accomplish, but I'm not noticing it, which is
and that's
really
good.
Cool.
I think that's a sign of really good storytelling and really good art, is being able to convey something without having to like shove it in your face. So for you to not even really notice that, but recognize that it was like really good, and then kind of clue in afterwards, that's probably a really good sign of some great storytelling.
Yeah,
absolutely. Through just the panels and the art alone. Right.
It's funny because speaking of color, on the next page, you want to talk about grotesque. There's kind of, I don't want to say this is ugly, but there's a big close up of this guy
when he's getting like beaten up by the Vulture.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty gross because, first of all, I'm just going to read this narration.
Yeah, even the description of it is brutal.
It's disgusting. He's like caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack. Alfred cannot begin to defend himself. He can only reel back against the hard alley wall as he feels his jaw and cheekbones cave in. Oh. And then it says, and as he looks up through puffy, swelling eyelids, he no longer sees the Vulture. He sees only death. That's pretty graphic.
That was brutal.
Yeah. Now the funny thing is if you look at the way his faces drawn, you can see that they're supposed to be like swelling and bruises, but they've colored it as if it's all just normal skin color. So to me, that's got to be a form of censorship. Like, I'm sure they intended there to be some red and like bruising in there, but they definitely don't show it. So, but that description is grotesque enough, I think.
Yeah. No, I felt the same exact thing reading it. Yeah. So
basically we're following along. So, this is sort of the Vulture is mixed up in organized crime. So it goes back to, I always liked when Spidey got into these organized crime stories. Now at this point, to be fair, there's very little plot after page 12 other than Spider-Man and the Vulture fighting on like the rooftops here, which is cool. Then they make their way to a train station, and then there's more fighting, which is again fun. But I guess there's not much in the way of plot in this one. What do you think?
I agree, but I will say though, like on the train station thing, they like actually fight in Grand Central Station. Okay. Which is, to me, always really fun to see characters like fight or just like be in places that are real.
Yes.
Like that to me has always been really fun about the Marvel comics, is that like everything is kind of rooted in real places. So sure. I always kind of like that they're in a real place, and you can like, oh, I know exactly where they are, and you can kind of pinpoint where this happened. And I also like that it was a good story point for them to be there too. I think Spider-Man makes an offhand remark about Vulture Vulture having an advantage in this place because there's lots of places for him to fly and room for him to kind of swoop around.
Yes.
So that was kind of a fun little, idea that they had, was let's place it here in this place specifically. That way Vulture has a little bit of an advantage, and then Spider-Man has even more to kind of overcome to defeat him. Mm-hmm. So it's fun.
Yeah, good point. I mean, if you're going to do a fight scene for like 7-8 pages, you might as well do it right.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Yeah, so definitely, so far out of the two, I do like Amazing better, but this was another enjoyable addition to Spectacular Spider-Man. So now we can move on to...
You want to do Marvel Team Up?
Oh, sorry, no. You know what? We'll do the annual.
You want to do the annual first? Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So as we said, we're usually going to do 3 issues per month, but in the case where there's an annual published in the month we're reviewing, we're definitely going to cover that annual.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting one. First of all, I have to point out that, so this is Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, King Size Annual, number 2, introducing the man called, is it pronounced Rapier? I guess it would
be. Rapier or Rapier? I always thought it was Rapier, but I don't know.
Rapier.
I'm
going to assume it's Rapier. I don't know.
Rapier is more French.
Yeah.
I like that, yeah.
Also, so I want to point out this cover is drawn by Bob Budiansky, infamous for creating all of the Transformers names and character bios. Yeah, so he was really an editor and an artist as well. Yeah, so cool cover.
I did not know that. That's really cool.
Yep. And the interiors are once again by Jim Mooney, who we just, we had his art in Amazing a few minutes ago. And again, I love it.
It's so great, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's like, and it's funny because this was a straight, like, this is, let's just call this pre-McFarlane Spider-Man. So at this point, everyone, like, at this point, John Romita Sr. had set the standard for Spider-Man. And I still like the fact that they were still drawing Spider-Man like, somewhat like the way John Romita would. Mm-hmm. And so it just has that classical feel. And I think Jim Mooney fits that style perfectly.
It's very good, yeah.
Yeah, the layouts are clean. The storytelling's, straightforward. There's a really nice, even like if you just go to page Digital 5, I love this. Just look at this nice page where Rapier's fighting one guy, Spidey's fighting another. Mm-hmm. And just, we cut to above them, standing on like the dock with all the bodies around them. Then we cut to a different angle of the one guy tied up in the webs. And then we cut to some nice over-the-shoulder shots of Spider-Man talking to Rapier, and then back. And then he's walking away. And then that final shot of him walking away into the mist. It's just classic art.
Yeah, it's very good. The variation of the panels is really great. The layout of everything, especially since, coming in from last week where a lot of the art seemed very kind of repetitive. This one, you can really get a sense of where they're fighting, what the action is that's going on, and the layout of everything lends itself to the storytelling.
Exactly.
Which is really great.
So in this story, basically, he meets this guy named Rapier, and then later on, he goes back to the Daily Bugle, and he finds out that the Daily Bugle is being sort of threatened by the Mafia, but in Marvel they're called the Magia or Magia. I guess it'd be Magia.
Magia, I think.
Yeah, and this particular crime boss is Silvermane.
Silvermane. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always thought he was cool, and basically he's threatening J. Jonah Jameson, but then J. Jonah Jameson, he gets all tough and sort of kicks him out, and then and basically they decide they're going to go ahead with their coverage of the Mafia anyway. Then Spider-Man decides to go to Silvermane's headquarters and beat the stuffing out of his henchmen and
right.
sort of threaten him a little bit, which, it's one of those things where Spider-Man's kind of in between. I mean, he's not really a vigilante like Batman, but he has been known to get violent with these guys, right?
Yeah.
Which I think it kind of just shows he's sort of a teenager and he's still sort of struggling with the right way to deal with this kind of thing. But it is kind of cool for him to deal with organized crime, right? Do you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's nice to kind of have a bit of a break between the big bad supervillains, like the the big names like Vulture. So after reading the other, this was the last one that I read. So after reading the other three, it was kind of a nice refresh and new story. So yeah, I liked it.
So yeah, there's a really good line on Digital 28. In the original, it was 37. But Rapier, so we should point out Rapier. He carries a what are those called? Those swords?
Is a rapier. A rapier. That's why his name is that.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Right. Okay. There you go. And so anyway, so he says, but you forced my hand. Now pick up the sword if you. Oh, so basically he's challenging Spider-Man to a duel.
It's so good.
Pick up the sword if you value life. And Spider-Man says, yeah, and what do I do with the thing? Put a marshmallow on the end of it? I love it's like a pure Stan Lee gag. It's great, just moments like that. So they do end up having this one-on-one sword fight, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And kind of in this castle. I don't know. I just thought that was a great moment. But, kind of interesting. Spider-Man actually loses the fight. Oh, no, he doesn't lose the fight. It's
he does win, but then...
Clarissa comes in,
right.
the girl. Yeah, and then knocks him out, even though he's got the proportionate strength of a spider. I don't know. I guess getting knocked out by the butt of a sword will do it to you. But so it's actually there's a lot of if you sort of, it's funny because when you look through these pages, if you go to page 34, there's a lot of text here to go through.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's an old rule in comics. I think you're only supposed to do is it 2 lines per bubble or something like that, or 3. This is a little bit too much, and so it's a little bit off-putting. But it's none of it's bad. It's just a little bit. It kind of just breaks the rule.
And I think breaking the rule is okay if it's
really good.
If it's really good. If it works, it works, right? And I think that because they had a kind of because they had a compelling story, I think that I was okay with reading a lot. And in breaking that rule, because the story in this one I thought was the strongest for sure this week. It might honestly be the strongest story we've read so far on any of our podcasts, in my opinion. I really had a lot of fun with this one. And
you know who wrote it, right? Our pal Ralph Macchio, who co-wrote Project Pegasus.
Oh my goodness!
So maybe Ralph Macchio is the unsung hero of the Bronze Age.
Maybe, yeah.
Because he doesn't have. I mean, I don't really hear his name mentioned much, but. So far, he's impressed us with everything he's done. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I mean, this isn't the story isn't like a masterpiece, but it's a well thought out, complete story with interesting characters, right?
And I think they also kind of rely on some stereotypes and other stories to base off of, because Rapier is based off of Zorro, I assume. At least that's the vibe I got from him. Sure. So they didn't even have to go too much into his backstory, and I kind of got the gist of who that character was. Just from the design and then kind of how he acted and, that swashbuckler, Inigo Montoya kind of vibe to him.
Sure.
So, yeah, he was a lot of fun. And then, making him the vigilante where you're kind of unsure if he's the hero or the villain. And having him kind of team up with Spider-Man a little bit at the beginning helps and lends to that. So, yeah, I thought that this one was the strongest story so far.
Yeah, I think you might be right. It's probably the best one this week. I'll agree with that for sure. I got to point out the one line of dialogue I got to point out. This is such a cliche. Is at the top of page digital 33 when Rapier gets shot. He actually says, "I'm shot in the back, in the back." Ugh, not good dialogue.
No,
not good dialogue. But still, overall, a good story, right?
Yeah.
What's also funny is that I especially noticed this like when I was a kid and I was reading these comics, is that like you get to the end of the story and you're not even sure if it's over. Like it just says, and once it did, I think so Spider-Man says, "I'm not sure myself, but I've got a hunch Rapier was forced to confront something inside himself tonight, something that's been gnawing away at him for years, and was ready to explode. Then, and once it did, I think he lost the most precious possession he ever had, and somehow, someday, I hope he realizes it." But it doesn't say the end. It doesn't say, it just ends.
Right.
Which is cool, which is fine.
I like that because they do kind of end off this story that they're telling, but then they also kind of have a little bit of a unless or maybe, possibly.
Right.
Like there's almost like a question mark at the end of the end.
Yep.
On this one. So yeah.
So it always leaves that possibility that he could come back. And,
right.
And does he come back? We'll have to keep reading to find out, right? So now we're going to move on to Marvel Team Up number 96.
All right. And
so this is interesting because this co-stars a certain Howard the Duck.
Right.
Now, are you familiar at all with Howard the Duck?
I'm a little bit.
Okay.
I haven't read too much of his comic, but I am definitely familiar with Howard the Duck.
See, it's funny because I got into Steve Gerber later in life, but I did one of those things I used to do, which is I went to these conventions and I snatched up dozens of comics written by him before having read any of them. Okay. And so I had read Omega the Unknown when I was a kid, and it was really good. If you ever get a chance to read it, and I've read his Submariner, they're really good. But the thing about Steve Gerber is he's a satirist. He does humor, and I think I actually first got exposed to his writing because he was one of the main writers on the G.I. Joe cartoon in the 80s.
Okay.
So he's got a certain sense of humor. But Howard the Duck, this is the thing about humor, created in 1976. I started reading that series. There's 32 issues that he did. I couldn't get past the first 10.
Right.
Because it was, to me, not funny at all. Now, I don't know if it was because what they were satirizing was no longer relevant. I don't know if the references were outdated, but I just could not get into it. So, I mean, other than the great art that it had, I just could not get into the writing. And so, unfortunately, I stopped reading it, sold them all off for $1 each. Sorry, Steve. But I'm still excited about, it's still something different to see Howard, guest star in a comic. And so this is a bizarre story where Spider-Man ends up sort of teaming up with Howard the Duck, I guess?
Yeah, it's really weird. I actually thought that I was going to have a lot of fun with this one, and I think I ended up kind of being a little disappointed.
Yeah, understandable. So it's written and drawn by Alan Kupperberg, who I'm not overly familiar with.
Right, neither am I.
I have his brother, Paul Kupperberg, on Facebook, but I don't know much about him other than that he did 2 issues of Transformers, the old Marvel series, numbers 5 and 6, which I thought were really good. He kind of has an unusual style. He's kind of a more of a cartoony style, right, than a realistic style. And apparently he took over the Howard the Duck comic strip after, I think it was Gene Colan left. But I actually think for this story, his art is perfect for Howard. The question is whether or not it's appropriate to Spider-Man. What did you think?
Yeah, I think in some places it worked, but then in others, like especially when Spider-Man was Peter Parker, it really didn't feel like him. Like it didn't feel like Peter. It didn't feel like Spider-Man. But yeah. I feel like some of the stuff when he's in the mask felt fine. But I think that it's he didn't necessarily nail the Peter Parker look.
Well, the thing is like if you look at page digital 6, there's at the very top, there's a great shot, I think, of Howard, and he's a taxi cab driver, and he's driving around this guy, the bad guy of the story. His name's Status Quo, but I think that's a great shot. Personally, I mean, it's maybe not my favorite style, but I think it works for a Howard the Duck story, definitely. However, if you jump ahead to, let's see, I just found one. Where is it? Okay, if you go to digital 3, now do you see the shots of Spider-Man swinging? Okay, so look at the middle panel,
like
which
his
is good.
pose.
But look at the one below it, where he's about to land on that building.
Right.
That's terrible, because if you look at it, his one leg is like in a completely different perspective than the entire city. Like, it doesn't match at all. It looks like he has one really short leg.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the perspective is correct. And if you look at the middle panel that I think is pretty good, I think the reason it's half decent is because it's probably a swipe of a Gil Kane shot or somebody. And there's a couple times in the story where it's like all of a sudden Spider-Man looks really well drawn, and that's just my guess, is that he's swiping like Gil Kane or John Romita or somebody. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. But yeah, so that's all I have to say about the art. I mean, in some spots it's really good. Like if you go to page 12, there's a shot of Howard the Duck getting out of like this little pond and kind of drying off, and then there's a shot of what is this, like a newsroom? I don't know. Stuff like that definitely works.
Yeah.
I just think that it's a little bit too, I guess I don't say sloppy, but like
it just feels like a different style, I guess, from other comics at the time, the Marvel comics at the time, and I think that's why it felt off. It's because we're reading the same character over and over again in this podcast, so we're very familiar with how the character looks and acts and the art style. Like, even if it does change from comic to comic, it at least has like a similar flavor and feeling to it. This one just felt the most out of place, at least to me. Yeah, I never felt that the art was bad. I just thought that it was like, to me it was jarring how different it was.
The other thing too is when you have like a TV show, like whatever it may be, X-Files or Buffy or something, when you have every episode has a different writer and a different director, the reason that they're able to stay consistent is because the cinematographer is the same, the sound guy is probably the same, the editor is probably the same. But in comic books, when you have a different artist, it can be drastically different, right? It'd be like if from one episode of a TV show to the next, you had a completely different lighting crew and a completely different cinematographer. It'd be unrecognizable, right? But unfortunately, when you have comics like this, like comics take a long time to draw, so you're really only going to have one artist do one comic per month. So if you have 4 Spider-Man comics, they're all going to be by different artists. Right. So, but anyway, okay, so this is what I would call not quite Gerber-esque, but maybe an imitation of Gerber. What did you think about the story? And I don't know, was it a successful satire, do you think, of like, I guess you could say American culture or certain aspects of it?
I don't know. It was weird. I personally didn't enjoy the satire in it. Like, I thought it was really kind of lame, and like it felt like it was trying a little too hard.
Right.
The whole status quo villain was pretty rough
on the nose.
Yeah. And like his whole backstory, talking about, you know, he became a villain when he was walking through the city and he saw people playing with frisbees and hula hoops and riding around on the roller skates. It was like it felt almost like Dr. Seuss had written it for The Grinch. Like it felt almost ripped from that, or I don't know. It was just goofy. It didn't point. It didn't work for me. I mean, even down to like when he entices a mob to kind of start going around New York and beating up and taking items away from people who enjoy fads and like are enjoying different things. And it's also weird too, because like frisbees and hula hoops are fads.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like people still use frisbees just as much as they did back then. So you're totally right. It's weird that it's kind of viewed as this.
I think the only reason, I know what you're saying, but I think the only reason they picked it is because in the 60s, the hula hoop was like one of the biggest fads like in history. Yeah, it was. And that's the thing. I mean, I grew up with the hula hoop, but I think when it came out, it'd be like Pokemon Go. Like Pokemon Go might be around 50 years from now, but like 2 years ago or whenever when it came out, it was like everywhere you went, right? Yeah. So that's probably what it is.
Okay.
But this kind of satire can work. Like, did you ever read Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol?
No, but I hear it's really good.
Oh, it's like, I would argue it's like one of the best superhero comics of the 90s. It's incredible. But there's this one issue where they do a parody of the Punisher, and it's called The Beard Hunter. And it's basically about a guy who's like the Punisher, who basically goes around, I think he kills anyone who has a beard. And now, but the thing is, it's so well written, right? But it's also an absurd thing to be targeting.
Yeah.
So something like this with the frisbees and hula hoops could be done well. It just wasn't quite successful.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I can say, the only thing I do like about this is that I love the fact that at this point in Spider-Man's history, you get to like the 90s where you have 18-part crossovers like, Maximum Carnage and Planet of the Symbiotes or whatever that stuff was. I like the fact that back in these days, you could pick up an issue of Spider-Man, you did not know what you were going to get.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
The possibilities, there was far more possibilities about, is this one going to be funny? Is it good? Like, look at this. In 1 month, we have basically a talking animal satire. We have a mafia story. We have like a Zorro guy.
And then like a classic superhero story.
And then, right. So I think that just goes to show like the benefits of not having to tie everything together into one big story.
Yeah.
So,
I've got a question.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for Marvel Team Up, I'm not sure, maybe you do know this or not, or maybe not sure, but what was the goal for Marvel Team Up at the time? Because to me, it seems like it's a good way to have a series where you have a main character like Spider-Man who's very popular and is going to bring in an audience, and then you have him team up with other heroes that are lesser known to kind of drive people to read those comics. Is that, I assume?
I would say 100% that's what it was created for, yes.
Okay.
As we're Brave and the Bold and DC Comics Presents and Marvel 2-in-1. Now, obviously, I think at this point, I don't even know if Howard the Duck had his own comic. He might have already been canceled.
Okay.
So maybe there was no direct benefit to having him in this. But
the reason why I asked was because the beginning of the comic felt like a Howard the Duck comic book.
Yes.
It like the way the narration, where they're introducing Spider-Man, and then the bubble underneath that is, oh, you knew that already? You knew who Spider-Man was? And then like they kind of continue and they start introducing Howard the Duck and talking about him, and then, oh, you knew that too, huh? Oh, okay. And just kind of that like almost like breaking the fourth wall aspect, I thought was kind of fun and charming. But then it isn't really continued on. But like to me, that felt like something that would be, specific to Howard the Duck and the Howard the Duck comic. So if that was something that I enjoyed, that would probably drive me to read more Howard the Duck comics. So that's why I kind of was thinking about that, and I kind of enjoyed that. You had a Spider-Man comic, but it was flavored completely differently because you're introducing the audience to a new character and trying to drive them to that comic book, to that different story.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm looking actually in the bullpen bulletins in this issue, and there was the Howard the Duck, the monthly series had been canceled, but there was the magazine. So technically, that's what this would have been plugging, is the Howard the Duck magazine, written by Bill Mantlo, drawn by Michael Golden, my favorite artist of this era, and inked by Bob McLeod. So yeah, that's what they were driving him to. And then what was the last issue was Spider-Man and, geez, who was it last week?
It was not quite. It was.
We should know this. Here, let me check here on the old. Let me go back. It was Mockingbird. Oh, Mockingbird, so there you go. Introducing a new character. I mean, which is another. it's another great way to introduce a new character is to stick them with Spider-Man's, right? So then she'd obviously get more exposure here than in her own series.
Right.
So set her up and then eventually get her own series, which she didn't really get one for a very long time, if at all. But yeah, that was obviously the intent.
Right.
Overall, so this month, okay, so let's we're gonna start like a new little feature. One of them is our favorite story, and one of them is our favorite cover. So of the 4, what's your favorite story this month then?
I think it's got to be the annual.
Sure.
That one was a lot of fun. It was a well-rounded story, and it kind of finishes it off, and then caps it off with like a kind of teaser if you wanted to kind of continue on, and if it did well, they could kind of continue that story. I think it was the most classic Spider-Man has been in a little while, like from what we've been reading, and the introducing the new character was also well done. So yeah, I think the annual was my favorite.
I don't know if it was the annual or if it was I think it might have been the issue of Amazing.
Yeah, 207.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was probably my favorite story.
It was very good.
Yeah. And it's funny because even the cover, I don't know if it was the best cover, but it's sort of the one that it stuck out. Like I've seen that cover so many times, and I just think that it's maybe the most memorable cover. What do you think?
Yeah,
What's your favorite cover?
One was by Mike Nazer, right? The cover.
Oh, was it? I didn't even check.
Yeah, I did notice that because I wanted to check to see who had done that one.
Okay, so that's probably why.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that one. I really like the cover as well.
Yeah, that's a good cover. So yeah, that's probably my favorite, which is like I said, it's surprising for me because it's Denny O'Neil, and I'm not a huge fan of Denny O'Neil, and I've also heard bad things. In fact, my one of my favorite Spider-Man websites it was Spidey Kicks Butt, and now that's sort of merged with the Spider-Man Crawl Space, and they've got a list of the 10 worst Spider-Man eras ever, and Denny O'Neil's run on Amazing is on there. So I haven't been expecting much, but so far I'm happy with it.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, and so anyway, I also want to point out I did pick up a new Spider-Man. It's very rare. I mean, I sort of pick and choose newer comics nowadays, but I did pick up a Spider-Man comic last week, and I think everyone should get it. It's, of course, I can't remember the name of it, so I'm going to look it up, but it's written by Jerry Conway, who everybody knows from his, I don't know how long he wrote Spectacular Spider-Man, but it was like 100 issues on Spectacular, and like 50 issues in Web of Spider-Man, and then he also had another run on Spectacular before that, and then he had another run on Amazing Spider-Man before that. And so he's back, and he's teamed up with Eric Larson and Mark Bagley, who I don't like Mark Bagley at all, but the comic is called The Amazing Spider-Man Going Big. And so even if it's not good, for the sake of supporting these veteran creators, I think everyone should pick it up because, I don't know, I mean, to me, if Jerry Conway's still kicking around, why not let him draw, or why not let him write Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, are you a fan of Eric Larson?
Yeah, I think I like Eric Larson. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I have him on Facebook and on Twitter, so I got to be careful what I say. But I actually prefer his early style when he was on Doom Patrol. I don't know if you ever saw that, but he drew Doom Patrol like in the 80s, and it was a really primitive style, but I kind of liked it better. And then he went on to, of course, do Spider-Man, and then he created Savage Dragon. I did buy the first few issues of Savage Dragon, but then one issue it went all ultra violent with like machine guns and just vigilante style justice, and I can't stand those kind of comics, so I stopped buying it. But I'm a fan of his work, and I have fond memories of his run on Amazing Spider-Man. So yeah, for that reason I picked up this new Spidey comic, Going Big, and so I recommend everyone else do the same. And that's about it.
Yeah.
So that's it for August 1980.
Right. So
in Spider-Man history.
So next episode we're going to be talking about September 1980. So if any listeners wanted to read those ahead of time and then have it fresh in your mind for when you listen to the next episode, you can do that.
Yes, and please let us know your thoughts on our reviews and your thoughts on these comics as we post them. Please feel free to give us constructive criticism as long as it's positive, and we'll go from there. And basically, and also please share these podcasts in whichever way you can. Tell your friends about them, and on and on and on, right? Because the landscape is littered with podcasts and web series, and obviously ours is the best, so we want everyone to know about it, right?
Right. And we are working on getting it on Spotify and iTunes, so hopefully soon we can get that going.
I don't know how to do any of that stuff, so that's all you, Josh.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Good luck with that. If you need any moral support, I can offer that. Other than that, I can't offer anything.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect, yeah. Okay, so we'll see everybody next week when we will be covering September 1980. See you next week.
All right, bye.